heard screams echoing down the corridor, and before she could react, a firm hand grabbed her by the waist. "Quiet," a deep voice murmured in her ear, "or they'll find us." Her heart pounded. She turned her face just enough to look at him and whispered, "There is no man alive who can command me." But he is not just any man, he is a wolf. And in that instant, he discovered something unexpected. The stubborn, rebellious orphan was far more than she appeared to be. She was exactly the kind of woman capable of turning a king's world upside down. Chapter 1. The scent of leather and iron filled Kira's lungs as she blocked a horizontal strike, her arm trembling from the impact. The soldier in front of her was twice her size, but she pivoted with precision, dodging the blade and countering with a sharp kick to his ribs. The man staggered, and she seized the moment to disarm him with a swift twist of her wrist. He dropped to his knees, gasping. "Again," she ordered, her steady voice slicing through the cold morning air. The soldier looked at her with a mix of respect and exhaustion, but he obeyed. Kira showed no mercy in training. She could not afford to. Being a woman in a kingdom where swords were considered a male privilege demanded more than skill. It required proving her worth every single day, without exception. Around the training yard, other guards paused to watch, some with veiled admiration, others with poorly concealed doubt. Kira ignored them all. She had learned long ago that words did not change minds, only actions did. The air carried the biting chill of the Northern Kingdom, and she was grateful for it. The cold kept the mind sharp and the muscles alert. She adjusted her stance, boots planted firmly in the packed dirt, when an unusual movement caught her attention. Riders were approaching the main gate, banners snapping in the wind. She frowned. It was not a trading caravan day. "Who are they?" she asked the soldier she had just knocked down. He got to his feet, brushing dust from his trousers. "Must be the visitors from the south. The king is expecting an alliance." Kira felt something uneasy settle in her stomach. Alliance meant marriage, and marriage meant Princess Cecilia, her lady, would have her fate sealed. She watched the riders draw closer. There was something different about them. The way they moved, the almost feral confidence in their posture. Then she saw their leader, a tall, broad-shouldered man whose presence seemed to pull the air from everything around him. Even from a distance, Kira felt a chill slide down her spine. Who is he? The thought came unbidden, irritating. She forced her gaze away and returned to training, but the sensation of being watched did not leave her. Cassian dismounted with the effortless grace of someone born to command. The Northern Kingdom was smaller than his own, but strategically valuable. An alliance with King Edmund would secure the borders and grant access to the trade routes his kingdom desperately needed. An arranged marriage. Simple. Practical. Political. He had not even met the princess. Arthur, his beta and closest advisor, stepped beside him, eyes scanning the yard with a predator's focus. The castle is well fortified. Impressive for such a small kingdom. Cassian nodded, but his attention was elsewhere. In the training yard, a figure moved with the fluidity of a deadly dance. A woman. He frowned, sharpening his senses. It was uncommon to see women fighting, especially not with that intensity. She spun, blocking a strike, and for a brief second the sun lit her face. Delicate features marked by fierce determination. Dark hair tied in a loose knot, strands escaping and sticking to her sweat-dampened forehead. And those eyes, even from a distance, Cassian could feel the force in them. His inner wolf stirred, restless. "Arthur," he said without taking his eyes off her. "Find out who she is." Arthur followed his gaze and lifted a brow. "The one in the training yard?" "Yes." Cassian was escorted to the chambers prepared for him, but his thoughts remained tangled with the image of her in the yard. There was something about her. "Control yourself," he warned inwardly. "You are here for duty, not distraction." Yet as he changed for dinner with King Edmund, he found his eyes drifting to the window, half expecting to see her again. Night fell quickly over the castle, bringing with it a dense silence Kira never fully trusted. She patrolled the corridors with silent steps, one hand always close to the dagger at her waist. Cecilia was in her chambers, guarded by trusted men. But Kira did not relax until she was certain everything was secure. Male voices echoed down the corridor from the great hall. The dinner must have been ending. She avoided that wing of the castle. She had no interest in mingling with nobles and their games of false courtesy. She was about to turn the corner when a scream tore through the night. Kira froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Another scream followed, along with the unmistakable clash of metal on metal. She ran toward the central courtyard, dagger already in hand, instincts fully alert. Chaos greeted her. Guards lay fallen, some unmoving, others dragging themselves along the ground with wounds. Masked figures rushed through the corridors, looting, destroying. Kira spotted one trying to break down the door of the east tower and did not hesitate. She launched forward, spinning to build momentum before delivering a precise kick to the invader's ribs. He dropped with a muffled grunt. Two more emerged from the shadows. Kira blocked the first strike, pivoted, and sliced the second man's arm. Blood sprayed, but she had no time to think. Another attacked from behind. She felt the danger. There were too many men for her. More were coming. She would not manage alone. She needed to get out, or she would die. So she turned and sprinted down the side corridor, and was yanked backward. A powerful arm wrapped around her waist while a large hand clamped over her mouth, smothering the protest she was about to shout. Her body was pressed against something solid and warm. A stone pillar concealed them from the looters rushing past. "Quiet," a deep voice murmured in her ear, so low it was nearly a growl. "Or they'll find us." Every muscle in her body tightened. Who the hell? Then the scent hit her. Pine and wet earth, something wild and untamed. Not one of the guards. She tried to struggle, but his grip only tightened, firm without hurting. "You're far too beautiful to be out of bed at this hour," he continued, his low tone laced with arrogance that made Kira's blood boil. "Leave this to the men." Rage flared inside her like a sudden blaze. Kira twisted her head and sank her teeth into the hand covering her mouth. He made a low sound, more surprised than hurt, and she seized the moment to wrench free. She turned to face him, breathless, and froze when she saw who it was. The visitor from the south, the man who had led the riders earlier. His eyes were almost golden in the flickering torchlight, and something in them made her stomach knot strangely. He was even more imposing up close, filling the space around them as though the world itself bent to his presence. "There is no man alive who can command me," she hissed, each word dripping with defiance. Before he could respond, Kira stepped back and ran toward the fight. Cassian stood still for a second, watching her vanish into the chaos. Then a slow, dangerous smile curved his lips. "You just met one," he thought in answer to her words, amusement dancing in his eyes. His inner wolf roared, demanding action. Cassian let the shift take over, bones rearranging, muscles expanding. In seconds, where a man had stood, there was now a massive wolf, fur black as night and eyes blazing with controlled fury. He threw himself into battle. The fight was brutal and swift. Cassian took down 3 looters before they could react, his jaws finding flesh with lethal precision. Arthur fought at his side in wolf form as well, directing the kingdom's guards to encircle the invaders. Cassian kept one eye on Kira throughout the battle. She fought like someone with nothing left to lose. Every movement calculated, efficient, deadly. She did not hesitate, did not retreat. She faced men twice her size with a courage that bordered on madness. Beautiful and dangerous, he thought, feeling something hot and primitive coil in his chest. When the last looter was captured, Cassian shifted back to human form, catching the tunic Arthur handed him. His breathing was still heavy, blood singing from the fight. Kira stood across the courtyard, wiping her bloodied blade on her clothes. She looked at him for a single second, only one, before turning away and disappearing into the castle shadows. Cassian smiled again. Very interesting. Morning brought answers that only raised more questions. Under interrogation, the looters had confessed. They had been hired. A group that had planned the attack with chilling precision, naming the person inside the castle who had provided information so they could enter undetected. Everything had been orchestrated with meticulous care. Too meticulous. This was certainly not a simple raid, Arthur murmured, eyes scanning the map of the castle spread across the table. Someone paid very well for this, and whoever it is, they are still free. I agree. Cassian crossed his arms, expression grim. The informant was identified, but he did not necessarily act alone. There could be more. Arthur nodded, already deciding. I will leave 10 of my men here. Discreet, loyal, experienced in this kind of work. They will reinforce the night watches, review all entrances and exits. He paused. And I will conduct a deeper investigation. I want to know who hired these men, and why the Northern Kingdom was the target. Will Edmund accept that? We will present it as diplomatic courtesy, Arthur replied with a faint smile. Small kingdom, vulnerable borders. Any sensible king accepts reinforcement when it is offered respectfully. Cassian nodded. It was the right decision, even if his mind was already drifting elsewhere. He needed to meet Princess Cecilia today, fulfill his duty, move forward with the alliance. The meeting was arranged in the castle gardens. Cassian dressed in his finest attire, more out of protocol than desire, and followed Arthur to the appointed place. Princess Cecilia waited, smiling politely yet distantly. She was beautiful, without question. Blonde hair braided with silk ribbons, light eyes, flawless posture. Everything expected of a princess. Cassian stepped forward, about to greet her, and saw who stood beside her. His inner wolf erupted in warning, restlessness flooding every fiber of his being. The world seemed to slow. This time he felt everything, her scent in the air, his heartbeat quickening, irrational heat climbing his spine. No, it cannot be. But it was. Kira stared at him with those defiant eyes, barely concealed hatred glowing in them like embers. She stood rigid, defensive, as if expecting an attack at any moment. Cassian forced himself to look at Cecilia, but it was like trying to look away from the sun. Impossible. His gaze kept returning to Kira, hungry, desperate. Your Majesty, Cecilia said in a sweet, rehearsed voice. It is an honor to finally meet you. Cassian bowed automatically, but his attention remained entirely on the woman beside the princess. The honor is mine, Your Highness. He could not help himself. His gaze slid back to Kira, and this time he smiled, slow, provocative. And who is this companion? Kira said nothing. She only stared at him with that intensity that made his blood burn. Cecilia answered, her tone slightly tighter. This is Kira, my lady-in-waiting, and also my personal guard. Personal guard, of course. That explained the fighting skill, the constant alertness. Cassian inclined his head toward Kira, eyes never leaving hers. A pleasure, Kira. She did not respond. She only continued looking at him with that inexplicable hatred that, strangely, only fascinated him more. The meeting proceeded according to protocol. Cecilia spoke about the kingdom, about her expectations for the marriage, about how wonderful it would be to unite the two crowns. Cassian asked the proper questions, gave the expected answers, but his mind was elsewhere. Why is my wolf reacting like this? Why can I not stop looking at her? Each time he tried to focus on Cecilia, his gaze treacherously returned to Kira, and each time she shot him a look that promised violence. When the meeting ended, Cassian watched the two women walk away. Kira walked half a step behind the princess, one hand always near her weapon, eyes scanning the surroundings. Protective, loyal, fierce. He needed to know more about her. Kira wanted to claw out her own eyes. Or rather, she wanted to claw out his. That damned arrogant man who would not stop looking at her as if he could see through clothes, through skin, straight into her soul. You're far too beautiful to be out of bed at this hour. His words still echoed in her mind, fueling the anger boiling in her veins. But the worst part was that something inside her had responded to his presence, something she could not control. When he had held her against that pillar, for 1 second, just one cursed second, she had not felt anger. She had felt heat. And that infuriated her even more. He is handsome, is he not? Cecilia remarked as they walked back to their chambers. Kira clenched her jaw. I did not notice, Your Highness. Cecilia laughed softly, a sound that did not reach her eyes. Liar. I saw the way you looked at him. With hatred, Kira wanted to shout. I looked at him with pure hatred, but she said nothing. She simply kept walking, trying to ignore the irritating sensation that, even from afar, she could still feel his eyes on her. Chapter 2. Cassian could not sleep. He lay for hours staring at the ceiling of the luxurious chamber assigned to him, trying to understand what the hell was happening to him. His inner wolf would not settle, restless, demanding something Cassian could not name. Kira. Her name echoed in his mind like a war drum. When the gray light of dawn finally slipped into the room, he gave up on rest. He rose, dressed, and went in search of Arthur. He found his beta in the training yard, watching the guards with the meticulous focus that made him the best advisor Cassian could have. Did you find out anything? Cassian asked without preamble. Arthur did not seem surprised. He turned toward the king with an expression bordering on amusement. About the woman you cannot get out of your head? Cassian narrowed his eyes. Watch your tongue. Kira Ashford, Arthur began, ignoring the veiled threat. 24 years old. Orphaned at 12 when an epidemic took her parents. Taken in by the castle out of pity. She started as a servant, but at 15 she saved Princess Cecilia from an outlaw attack using nothing but a kitchen knife. Cassian raised his brows. 15. Since then, Arthur continued, the king allowed her to train with the guards. It caused quite an uproar at first, as you can imagine. A woman wielding a sword is not exactly well received, not even here in the north. But she silenced them all. She is one of the best fighters in the castle, loyal to the princess, sleeps in the chambers beside hers, trusts no one else with Cecilia's safety. Loyal, skilled, brave. Each detail only fed the fire burning inside Cassian. Anything else? He asked, keeping his voice controlled. Arthur hesitated. The guards say she has never shown interest in anyone, neither man nor woman. It is as if she is made of ice. Something primitive and possessive coiled in Cassian's chest. He closed his eyes and drew in a slow breath, trying to organize the chaos inside him. When he opened them again, a frightening certainty burned there. Arthur. His voice came out lower, rougher. She is my mate. The beta went still. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then Arthur spoke carefully. Are you certain? Completely. Cassian ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every gesture. My wolf recognized her the second I saw her, and when I touched her, he shook his head. I have never felt anything like it. It is as if every fiber of my being is screaming that she belongs to me. But you are promised to the princess. Do you think I do not know that? Cassian turned on him, eyes blazing with barely contained emotion. Do you think I do not realize this is a disaster? That I am trapped between duty and this? Arthur was silent for a moment, processing. What are you going to do? I do not know. The admission hurt. Cassian always had a plan, always knew the next move. But now he was completely lost. I need to think. I need to find a way to cancel this marriage without provoking direct conflict with the kingdom. I cannot marry her now knowing that. knowing that I cannot. I need to speak to my advisors and find a way to fix this. The beta nodded, unwavering loyalty written across his features. You know I stand with you, no matter what you decide. I know. Cassian placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. Thank you. But even as he spoke, his mind was already elsewhere, already on her. Kira splashed cold water on her face, trying to wash away the sleepless night. Her thoughts had been relentless, always circling back to that moment by the pillar, to his scent, to the way her body had responded. Pathetic. She hated herself for it, hated that he had managed to breach her defenses so easily. Kira? Cecilia's voice came from the adjoining room. Are you awake? Yes, Your Highness. Kira dried her face and stepped into the princess's chambers. Cecilia sat before her mirror, while a maid brushed her golden hair. She smiled at Kira, and this time the smile seemed genuine. I need you with me today, Cecilia said. I will be spending the day with King Cassian, getting to know him better. Kira's stomach tightened in a way she refused to examine. Of course. He is interesting, do you not think? Cecilia continued, eyes bright. Handsome, powerful, exactly the kind of husband any woman would wish for. Kira kept her expression neutral. If Your Highness says so. I will get ready, she said simply, retreating to her own chamber. She dressed carefully, leather trousers, dark tunic, boots that allowed silent movement. She secured her hair tightly, strapped on her weapons. When she returned, Cecilia was ready, wearing a blue gown that enhanced her pale eyes. They met Cassian in the gardens. He stood with his back to them, observing the rose bushes beginning to bloom despite the cold. When he turned and saw them, Kira felt the air leave her lungs. In daylight, he was even more striking. Strong jaw, eyes that shifted between gold and brown depending on the light, the way he carried himself with innate confidence. He looked first at Cecilia and bowed respectfully. Princess Cecilia, you look beautiful this morning. Thank you, Your Majesty. Cecilia curtsied gracefully, clearly pleased. Cassian's eyes flickered briefly to Kira, meeting hers for a single second before returning to Cecilia. But that second was enough to send Kira's heart racing. I thought we might walk through the gardens, Cecilia said, stepping closer and lightly touching his arm. Speak about the future. Of course. Cassian offered his arm, and Cecilia accepted it with a radiant smile. Kira followed 3 paces behind, as protocol dictated. She kept her attention on their surroundings, scanning for danger, but she could not help noticing the way Cassian carried himself, the tone of his voice when he answered Cecilia's questions. My father is very excited about our union, Cecilia said melodiously. He believes our kingdoms together will be unstoppable, a true power. Your father is a wise man, Cassian replied politely. And you, Your Majesty? Are you excited about our marriage? There was a pause. Just a moment of hesitation. But Kira noticed it. I believe strategic alliances are essential to the prosperity of any kingdom, he said, perfectly diplomatic and utterly hollow. Cecilia did not seem to notice, or chose not to. She continued speaking about plans for the ceremony, about how they would rule together, about the children they would have, and how they would be raised between the 2 realms. Cassian answered when required, but Kira could see the distraction in his eyes. He was present physically, but his mind was elsewhere. It is none of your concern, she reminded herself firmly. He is not your problem. But when they paused by the fountain, and Cecilia laughed at something Cassian said, touching his arm possessively, something uncomfortable twisted in Kira's stomach. Jealousy? No. Impossible. The walk continued like that for another hour, Cecilia speaking enthusiastically about their shared future, Cassian responding politely, but without real enthusiasm. And Kira trailing silently, trying not to think about how those hands had held her waist the night before. When they finally returned to the castle, Cecilia bid Cassian farewell with a graceful curtsy and a promising smile. "Until dinner, Your Majesty." "Until dinner, Princess." Kira did not look back as she followed Cecilia, but she could feel his gaze on her, burning through the back of her tunic. The following days fell into a torturous pattern. Cecilia continued her meetings with Cassian, always accompanied by Kira. Conversations about the wedding, alliances, the glorious future they would build together. Cassian maintained a mask of polite interest, but never fully committed. His answers were always vague, always diplomatic, always leaving room to retreat. Kira remained in the shadows, observing, protecting, trying to ignore the way her heart accelerated every time Cassian entered a room. He did not look at her directly during those meetings. He kept his focus on Cecilia, as he should, but Kira could feel the tension radiating from him, the way his muscles tightened when she passed too close. It was a silent torture for them both. At night, Kira escaped to the stables. Checking on the horses became her excuse, her way of preserving her sanity. The scent of hay and leather, the soft sounds of the animals. It all helped calm her chaotic thoughts. But even there, she could not escape him completely. Her mind always returned to him. The way he had held her. The way his voice had sounded in her ear. The terrifying second when she had wanted to surrender completely to that embrace. "Stop," she ordered herself. "Just stop thinking about him." But it was like trying to stop breathing. Cassian was losing his mind. Every minute beside Cecilia was a lie. Every conversation about marriage, about a future together, about children they would never have. It was a farce slowly suffocating him. Because while Cecilia spoke, all he could think about was Kira. The way she had bitten his hand. The fury in her eyes. The strength with which she had fought during the attack. She was pure fire, and he was burning. Arthur found him in the library on the third night, after yet another endless dinner with Cecilia and King Edmund. "You need to make a decision soon," the beta said bluntly. "The princess is beginning to press for a date for the official announcement." Cassian closed the book he had been pretending to read. "I know. And I do not know, Arthur." Frustration bled into his voice. "How can I marry her when every fiber of my being is screaming for someone else?" "The mate bond is powerful," Arthur said carefully. "Stronger than politics, stronger than duty. But breaking a commitment like this could cause war," Cassian finished. "I know. Believe me, I know." Silence filled the library. Then Cassian rose abruptly. "I need to get out, ride, think." Arthur did not try to stop him. The forest surrounding the castle was dense and ancient, the trees forming such a thick canopy that little sunlight reached the ground. Cassian rode without direction, letting the stallion choose the path, needing only movement, fresh air, the illusion of freedom. His wolf was restless, clawing beneath his skin, demanding that he return, that he seek her out, that he claim what was his. "Control yourself," he commanded inwardly. "Just control yourself." The sound of running water caught his attention. A stream. He guided the horse that way, thinking perhaps cool water would help clear his mind. That was when he saw the other horse. The chestnut mare stood calmly at the bank, drinking. Cassian frowned, recognizing it as one of the castle's horses. Then he heard it. A soft splash. Movement. Cassian dismounted silently and walked toward the sound, curiosity piqued. He pushed aside a few branches and froze. Kira was in the stream. The water reached her waist, and she had removed her tunic, wearing only a thin shift that clung to her soaked body. Her dark hair was loose, floating around her like black silk. The sunbeams that pierced through the leaves struck her skin, making it glow like liquid gold. She was washing her face, eyes closed, completely unguarded. Cassian forgot how to breathe. He had never seen her like this, relaxed, vulnerable, free of the armor of anger and defiance she always wore. She was utterly breathtaking. His wolf roared inside him. Mine. He should leave. Let her be. Turn around and return to the castle. But his feet moved forward. The branch snapping beneath his boot shattered the silence like a gunshot. Kira spun so fast water splashed around her, her hand instinctively going to where her dagger should have been, but was not. Her eyes locked with his, and Cassian saw the exact moment recognition struck her, followed by anger. You, she hissed, crossing her arms protectively over her chest. What the hell are you doing here? Cassian raised his hands in a placating gesture, unable to suppress the smile curving his lips. I could ask you the same. I was here first, she shot back, her face flushing. With anger or embarrassment, he was not sure. Leave. Technically, he said, stepping closer to the bank, but keeping a respectful distance. This forest belongs to King Edmund, so neither of us should be here without permission. You are being pedantic, and you are adorable when you are irritated. Her eyes flashed. Adorable? I will do what? Cassian interrupted, tilting his head with the arrogance he knew infuriated her. You are unarmed, soaked, and I outweigh you by at least 30 pounds of muscle. Muscle means nothing when you know where to strike, she replied, though he could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She was nervous. Not of him physically. Cassian knew she did not fear a fight, but nervous of what he represented, of what stood between them. Do you often swim alone in the forest? He asked, shifting tactics. Does not seem very safe for the princess's personal guard. I can take care of myself. I saw, the night of the attack. He stepped closer to the bank. You fight well, better than most of my own guards. Kira studied him suspiciously. Why are you being kind? Can I not admire skill when I see it? Not when it comes from you. That made him laugh, a genuine sound that echoed through the forest. Do you truly hate me that much? Yes. But the answer came too fast, too desperate to be entirely true. Cassian tilted his head, eyes roaming her face. Liar. Get out of here, Kira demanded, though her voice trembled slightly. Now. Not until you leave the water. He crossed his arms deliberately, planting his feet. I will not leave you here alone and vulnerable. I do not need your protection. Perhaps not, but you will have it anyway. They stared at one another for a long moment, she in the water, he on the bank, the tension between them thick enough to slice. Finally, Kira made a frustrated sound and stepped out of the water. And Cassian made the mistake of looking. The wet shift clung to every curve of her body, outlining her narrow waist, her breasts, her thighs. Water droplets trailed down her golden skin, catching the sunlight. Her soaked hair fell in dark waves over her shoulders. She was a vision capable of undoing men. Stop looking at me like that, Kira hissed, grabbing her tunic and pulling it on quickly, though not before Cassian had memorized every detail. Like what? His voice came out rougher than intended. Like... She struggled for words. Like you have the right. Cassian stepped toward her, unable to restrain himself. And what if I told you I feel like I do? Then I would say you are insane. But she did not step back. Perhaps I am, he admitted, stopping only inches away. Close enough to smell her. Fresh water and something purely her. You are driving me insane. Stop, she whispered. But it did not sound like an order. It sounded like a plea. Stop what? Noticing you? Thinking about you every second of every day? Wanting... He shook his head. I cannot stop, Kira. Believe me, I have tried. She stared at him, eyes wide, vulnerable in a way he had never seen. You were going to marry Cecilia. I know. She is my princess. I know. So this, she gestured between them, her voice breaking, cannot happen. Cassian lifted his hand slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When she did not, he touched her face, fingers tracing the line of her jaw with a reverence that surprised him. "You are beautiful," he said simply. "So incredibly beautiful it hurts to look at you." Kira closed her eyes, and he saw a tear slip free. "Do not do this. Please, do not make this harder." Harder would be staying away. He leaned in, bringing his face closer to hers. "Cassian." His name on her lips was his undoing. He kissed her. It was not gentle, as it should have been. It was desperate, hungry, like a man who had finally found water after days in the desert. His lips claimed hers with an urgency that startled them both. Kira froze for a single second, only one, before melting against him. Her hands tangled in his hair, pulling, demanding more. She kissed him back with the same ferocity with which she fought, fearless, unrestrained. Cassian pulled her against him, one hand at her waist, the other tangled in her damp hair. She fit against him as if made for it. "Mine," his wolf roared triumphantly. "Finally mine." The kiss deepened, tongues meeting, teeth grazing lips. Years of loneliness, of never finding someone who made his heart race. Everything exploded in that single kiss. But Kira shoved him hard against the chest, without warning, and before he could react, her hand sliced through the air. The crack of her slap echoed among the trees. He did not dodge, did not step back. He simply stood there, head turned slightly from the impact, lifting his hand slowly to his face, fingers touching the skin that burned. A slow, dangerous smile curved his lips. "Do not complicate things," Kira said, her voice steady, though threaded with a crack she could not hide. "You should not strike a king," he replied, voice low and rough. Kira stepped closer, eyes locked on his without flinching. "What are you going to do about it?" The silence that followed was heavy, dense. Cassian studied her, chin lifted, defiant gaze, that impossible spark that set him ablaze, and felt something tighten painfully in his chest. "She is going to kill me," he thought, "and I will let her." Before he could answer, Kira turned and mounted her mare in one fluid motion. Then she rode off, galloping back toward the castle without looking back. Cassian remained at the edge of the stream, hand still on his face, smile still on his lips. Kira rode as if demons chased her. Perhaps they were. What have I done? What have I just done? She had kissed Cecilia's betrothed, betrayed her princess, and slapped him. And the worst part, the part that made her want to scream, was that she did not regret it. That kiss had been everything. More than she had imagined, more than she knew was possible. It was as if every part of her had finally found its place. "But he is not yours," the cruel voice of reason reminded her. "He never will be." When she reached the stables, she handed the mare to one of the grooms and ran to her chambers. She needed distance, time to think, to process what had happened. But as she passed Cecilia's rooms, she heard the princess's voice. "Setting the date for the announcement. My father is growing impatient." Kira froze. Cecilia was speaking to someone, likely one of the other ladies in waiting. Nausea rose in Kira's throat. What have I done? She continued to her room, shut the door, and slid down against it until she sat on the floor. The tears came then, hot, bitter, relentless, because she knew the truth. It did not matter how fast her heart raced when he was near. It did not matter that the kiss had felt like the most right thing she had ever experienced. None of it mattered, because he belonged to Cecilia, and Kira could never take what was not hers. What neither of them knew was that, at that very moment, Cecilia stood in her chambers, gazing out the window, a thoughtful expression on her face. She had noticed the way Cassian looked at Kira. Of course she had. She was not a fool. And for the first time in her life, Princess Cecilia felt something ugly and dark coil in her chest. Jealousy. She touched the necklace around her neck, a gift from her late mother. She rolled it between her fingers, thinking. Cassian was hers. The marriage was arranged. The agreement was made. And if Kira thought she could take that from her, well, Cecilia smiled, a cold, calculated smile. Kira was about to discover who truly ruled that castle. Moira, she called, and one of the younger servants appeared in the doorway. Yes, Your Highness? I need you to do something for me, Cecilia said, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. And it must be discreet. The girl nodded, eyes wide. I want you to follow Kira, Cecilia instructed. Every night, and report to me everything she does, whom she speaks to, where she goes. Everything. Do you understand? Yes, Your Highness. Good. Cecilia turned back to the window. You may go. When she was alone again, her smile widened. Let us see how far your loyalty truly goes, dear Kira. Chapter 3. The next 3 days were a refined kind of torture. Kira saw Cassian everywhere, in the corridors, in the gardens, during meals. And each time, it felt as though the air was sucked from the room. Their eyes would meet for seconds too long, heavy with everything they could not say aloud. She tried to keep her distance, but the castle seemed to have shrunk, conspiring to throw them together at every turn. Cecilia continued her endless conversations about the wedding, always with Kira nearby. She spoke of the ceremony, of the gown she would have made, of how wonderful it would be to rule beside a king as powerful as Cassian. And through it all, Kira could feel his gaze on her, burning, demanding. Stop looking at me, she begged silently. Please, just stop. But he never did. During dinner in the great hall, Kira stood at her usual post, back against the wall, watching. The high table was full. King Edmund, Cecilia, Cassian, Arthur, several advisors and nobles. Conversation flowed freely, fueled by wine and politics. Cecilia was particularly radiant that evening, dressed in green that enhanced her golden hair. She laughed at the nobles' jokes, touched Cassian's arm possessively, played the role of future queen to perfection. And Cassian was clearly uncomfortable. Kira saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened each time Cecilia touched him. He drank more wine than he should have, his eyes roaming the hall restlessly, until they found hers. The world slowed. Even with all that distance, even with so many people between them, Kira felt as if they were completely alone. His eyes said everything: hunger, frustration, need. I want you, they said. I cannot stop wanting you. Kyra forced herself to look away, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. She focused on checking the exits, on watching the guards, on anything other than those golden eyes promising impossible things. Your Majesty, Cecilia's voice cut through her thoughts. Are you listening to me? Cassian blinked, turning his attention back to the princess. Apologies. I was distracted. Clearly, Cecilia said, and there was a hint of irritation in her voice she failed to fully conceal. I was saying that my father suggested we officially announce our engagement at the next full moon. It would be a magnificent celebration. Silence. A heavy silence that stretched too long. Is it not rather soon for such an announcement? Cassian said carefully at last. We are still getting to know one another. Cecilia's smile faltered. Getting to know one another? Your Majesty, our marriage was arranged months ago. Getting to know each other is merely a formality. An important formality, Cassian countered, and Kira could see frustration beginning to leak into his gestures. I will not commit to a date until I am certain that... Certain of what? Cecilia interrupted, her voice rising slightly. What exactly must you be certain of, Your Majesty? Everyone at the table had fallen silent, watching the exchange with poorly disguised interest. Cassian drew in a slow breath, clearly forcing himself to remain calm. "I simply need more time, Princess. That is all." Cecilia stared at him for a long moment, before forcing a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Of course. As you wish." But Kira saw it. Saw the cold anger flash in the princess's eyes. Saw the way her fingers tightened around her wineglass, knuckles whitening. This is going to end badly. A dark premonition settled in Kira's stomach. Very badly. After dinner, when Cecilia finally dismissed her, Kira slipped away to the stables. They had become her sanctuary, the only place she could breathe without feeling the weight of judging eyes or Cassian's scent lingering in every corridor. She was brushing the mare when she heard the footsteps. She knew those steps now. The rhythm, the weight, the confidence with which they struck the ground. No, she thought desperately. Not now. But when she turned, there he was. Cassian standing at the stall entrance, eyes glinting in the dim torchlight, expression unreadable. "You need to stop following me," Kira said, but her voice was too weak to be convincing. "Then stop running." "I am not running. I am doing my job." Cassian stepped into the stall. Then another step. "Your job is tending horses at this hour of the night?" "My job is ensuring the castle is secure." Kira turned back to the mare, unable to face him. "Including the stables." "Kira." His voice was soft now, almost pleading. "Look at me. No. Please." Something in the way he said it broke her resistance. Kira turned slowly, and what she saw in his eyes made her heart tighten painfully. Vulnerability, confusion, raw need. "I cannot do this," he said simply. "I cannot pretend you do not exist. I cannot sit beside her and smile and plan a future I know is wrong." "Cassian," she began, but he lifted a hand. "Let me finish." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every motion. "Do you know what it feels like to have your body torn in two? To have half of you doing what it must while the other half is screaming that everything is wrong?" Kira knew. She knew far too well. "I know this is impossible," Cassian continued, stepping closer. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I cannot stay away." "You have to," she whispered, tears threatening to spill. "We both do." "Why?" He was so close now she could feel the heat radiating from him. "Why must we deny this?" "Because you are going to marry Cecilia." "I do not want to." The silence that followed was deafening. Kira stared at him, stunned. "What did you say?" "You heard me." Determination burned in his eyes now, mingled with something that looked like desperation. "What if I refuse the marriage?" "You cannot do that." Kira shook her head, panic rising. The alliance, the kingdoms, this could harm both realms and spark a war. "Then let there be war," he said with a ferocity that made her shiver. "You are insane." "Yes." He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. "Completely, irrevocably insane. Perhaps I can cancel the marriage without causing war. I have sent a letter to my advisors. I am waiting for their response on how to handle this. But please, do not pull away from me. I will fix it." "Cassian, do not—" But he was already leaning in, capturing her lips in a kiss that stole whatever protest she had left. And Kira kissed him back. It was different from the kiss at the stream. That one had been desperate, stolen, shocking. This one was deliberate, conscious, a choice they were both making despite knowing the consequences. His hands slid to her waist, pulling her against him. Kira wrapped her arms around his neck, fingers burying in his hair. The kiss deepened. Cassian gently pressed her back against the stall wall, his body fitting against hers in a way that made every nerve ignite. His hands traced her back, her hips, as if trying to memorize every curve. "Gods, Kira," he murmured against her lips, voice rough. "You are undoing me." "Welcome to the club," she replied, dragging him back into another kiss. They lost themselves in one another, hands exploring, lips tasting, bodies moving in a dance as old as time. The crunch of hay beneath their feet, the scent of leather and horse, none of it mattered. There was only them. Cassian lifted her effortlessly, and Kira wrapped her legs around his waist, feeling every muscle against her body. He carried her to a darker corner of the stable where clean hay was piled. He laid her down with a gentleness that contrasted with the urgency of his kisses. He covered her body with his, and Kira arched into him, seeking more contact, more warmth, more of him. "Tell me to stop," Cassian whispered against her neck, leaving a trail of burning kisses. "Tell me, and I will." Kira knew she should. Knew this was madness, betrayal, impossible. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, "Do not stop. Please, do not stop." Something dark and triumphant flashed in his eyes. "Mine," he said, and it sounded like both a promise and a threat. "You are mine." "Wrong," the rational voice in her mind screamed. "This is wrong." But when his lips found hers again, when his hands mapped fire across her skin, when he murmured her name, everything felt impossibly, perfectly right. They lost themselves in each other that night. Hands discovering, lips exploring, bodies joining in a way that felt inevitable. It was not only physical, it was as though something deeper was connecting, something primal and essential. "Mate," something whispered in Kira's mind, but she pushed the thought away. Impossible. Mates were rare, legendary. It could not be. But when Cassian held her afterward, both of them slick with sweat and sated, when he kissed her forehead with a tenderness that made her chest ache, Kira knew. She was completely, irrevocably lost. What neither of them saw was the small figure hidden in the shadows. Moira, the young servant, was pressed against the outer wall of the stable, eyes wide, hand covering her mouth to stifle any sound. She had followed Kira as Princess Cecilia had ordered, every night for a week. And finally she had something to report. The princess will want to know this, she thought, a nervous smile curving her lips. Silent as a shadow, Moira slipped away from the stable and ran back to the castle. Cecilia was brushing her hair when the urgent knock came at the door. "Enter," she called without turning. Moira stepped inside, breathless, cheeks flushed. "Your Highness, I saw." Cecilia set the brush down slowly, meeting the girl's eyes through the mirror. "Saw what, exactly?" "Kira and King Cassian." Moira swallowed hard. "In the stable. They were together." For a long moment, Cecilia did not move. Did not speak. She simply stared at her own reflection, expression carefully neutral. Then, slowly, a cold smile curved her lips. "Together," she repeated softly. "In what way, precisely?" Moira flushed deeper. They kissed. And more. Much more, Your Highness." "I see." Cecilia turned in her chair, facing the servant directly. "Are you absolutely certain of what you saw?" "Yes, Your Highness. I saw everything." "Excellent." Cecilia rose and walked slowly to the window. Outside, the full moon cast the castle in silver light. "You did very well to tell me, Moira. Very well indeed." "Thank you, Your Highness." "You may go." "And Moira?" Cecilia glanced over her shoulder. "Not a word of this to anyone. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Highness." When the door closed, Cecilia turned her attention back to the night beyond the glass. So this is how it will be, she thought, rage simmering like lava beneath a calm surface. Her hands curled into tight fists. Kira had always been loyal. Always. Ever since Cecilia had lifted her from a life of servitude. Servant. That is what she was. That is what she would always be, if not for Cecilia's kindness. Without it, Kira would still have her hands in dirty water washing dishes. And this was how she repaid her? A bitter, silent laugh formed in the princess's chest. She had always known deep down that something was off about Kira. That loyalty almost too perfect. That direct gaze that never lowered as it should. That presence that filled any room she entered. People looked at Kira. They always looked. And Cecilia had always pretended not to notice. The truth was, she had never liked it. Never liked the way the guards respected her, how servants whispered her name with admiration, how even her own father sometimes praised her in Cecilia's presence. Who does she think she is? No one. That was it. No one. An orphan who swept corridors until the day Cecilia, out of pure pity, chose to give her something better. If not for that, Kira would still be scrubbing floors. And she stole her man as thanks. No, Cecilia decided, determination hardening into something cold and sharp. This will not happen. Cassian was hers. The marriage was hers. The glorious future as queen was hers. And if Kira thought she could take that from her, well, Kira was about to learn a very painful lesson about gratitude. Cecilia walked to her desk and opened a hidden drawer. From it, she took a small glass vial filled with a clear liquid. Scent-erasing potion. Purchased from a healer in the mountains months earlier. Purely as a precaution. Cecilia had never thought she would actually need to use it. But now, she smiled, rolling the vial between her fingers. Now I have the perfect use for it. Plans began to form in her mind. Vengeful plans that would ensure Kira paid for her betrayal. And as for Cassian, well, he too needed to learn. Needed to understand that one does not break a promise to a princess. Cecilia glanced at the calendar on the wall. The full moon would be in 3 days. Perfect, she thought. Enough time. She summoned another servant, older, more loyal, more willing to do what was necessary. Marta, Cecilia said when the woman entered. I need a favor that requires absolute discretion. Marta inclined her head. Anything for your highness. Good. Cecilia handed her the vial. I know a healer in the mountains. I need you to go to her tomorrow at dawn. Take this. She wrote something on a piece of parchment. And ask for exactly what is written here. Marta took the parchment and the vial without question. It will be done, your highness. And Marta? Cecilia smiled, though there was no warmth in it. If anyone finds out, I will deny everything, and you will bear the consequences alone. Do you understand? The servant paled but nodded. I understand, your highness. Excellent. You may go. When she was alone again, Cecilia returned to the window, staring toward the stable in the distance. Enjoy it while you can, Kira, she thought, cold fury settling in her chest. Because this is far from over. In the stable, completely unaware of the danger approaching, Cassian and Kira remained entwined in the hay. What are you thinking about? Cassian asked softly, tracing lazy patterns along her arm. Kira was silent for a moment. About how this will destroy us. About how I cannot regret it. About how I have never felt so complete and so terrified at the same time. But what she said was about how everything became so complicated. Cassian pulled her closer. I will fix it. I promise. How? She turned to face him. How are you going to fix something like this? I am waiting for my advisor's response so I can handle this in the best possible way, with the least damage, he admitted. And I will speak to King Edmund. I will explain. Explain what? Kira sat up abruptly. That you no longer wish to marry his daughter? Not exactly. Cassian sat up as well, cupping her face in his hands. Because I have found my mate. Kira's world stopped. What did you say? You are my mate, Kira. His eyes shone with absolute certainty. My wolf recognized you the second I saw you. And I have spent these days trying to deny it, trying to ignore it. but I cannot anymore. That changes nothing. You are still promised. But I do not have to be. Urgency sharpened his voice. I can break the agreement. I can... and cause conflict between the kingdoms and Princess Cecilia? I should never have done this. Kira shook her head. I will not let you do that. Kira. No. She rose, beginning to dress. This was a mistake. A wonderful and terrible mistake, but a mistake nonetheless. Cassian stood as well, frustration evident in every line of his body. It was not a mistake, and you know it. What I know, she said, forcing firmness into her voice even as her heart shattered, is that you are going to marry Cecilia, and I will remain her guard. And this, she gestured between them, will never happen again. You do not believe that. I have to. She finally looked at him, letting him see the tears in her eyes. Or I will leave for somewhere else. I do not know if I can endure all this. Before he could respond, she fled the stable, running back toward the castle. Chapter 4. Kira could not sleep that night. She lay in her narrow bed staring at the ceiling, her body still humming with the memory of Cassian's touch. Her lips still tingled. Her skin still burned where his hands had traced paths of fire. Mate. The word echoed in her mind like a funeral bell. She knew what it meant. Mates were sacred among shifters, a bond that transcended choice, dictated by fate, by the gods, or by whatever force ruled the universe. When a wolf found his mate, nothing mattered more. Nothing else mattered at all. But how could it be true? How could she, an orphan, a nobody, be a king's mate? And even if it is true, the cruel voice of reality whispered, what does that change? Cassian was still promised to Cecilia. There were still kingdoms to consider, alliances to maintain, wars to prevent. Love, or destiny, or whatever that was not enough to overturn politics. When the sun finally rose, Kira got up with an aching body and a soul worn thin. She dressed mechanically, tied her hair back, strapped on her weapons. Another day pretending everything was normal. Another day lying to everyone, including herself. She knocked on Cecilia's door as she did every morning. Come in, the princess's voice called from within. Kira pushed the door open and found Cecilia already awake, seated by the window with a cup of tea in her hands. There was something different about her this morning. Something in her eyes Kira could not quite name. Good morning, Your Highness, Kira greeted, keeping her voice neutral. Good morning, Kira. Cecilia smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Did you sleep well? The innocent question made guilt explode in Kira's chest. If she knew, if she had any idea what I did. Yes, Your Highness. Good. Cecilia took a sip of tea, never taking her eyes off Kira's face. You know, Kira, you have seemed so overworked lately. I have been taking up far too much of your time. I want you to take the entire day for yourself. Relax. Go for a ride or something. But who will protect you? The castle guards will be sufficient for a day. Cecilia's tone was final. That is an order, Kira. Kira hesitated, then nodded. As you wish, Your Highness. When she left the chambers, the sense that something was wrong only grew, but she could not pinpoint what. Cassian woke with the sun on his face and absolute certainty burning in his chest. Enough. Enough pretending. Enough trying to do what was expected when every fiber of his being screamed that it was wrong. He dressed quickly and went to find Arthur. He found his beta in the training yard, supervising the guards as always. When Arthur saw the expression on Cassian's face, he dismissed the men at once. What happened? He asked as soon as they were alone. I am ending the engagement. Arthur closed his eyes briefly. Are you sure? Completely. Cassian dragged a hand through his hair. I cannot marry her, Arthur. Not when Kira is my mate. It would be a betrayal of everything I am. King Edmund will not accept that easily, and the advisors still have not answered. I know. Cassian squared his shoulders. But I will offer compensation. Gold, land, trade agreements. Anything but this marriage. Arthur studied his king for a long moment. And if he refuses? If he considers it a breach of honor? Then we will face the consequences. The determination in Cassian's voice was unshakable. But I will not live a lie. Not when I have found the one who makes my wolf scream. The beta nodded slowly. What will you do now? I will speak to Kira first. I need to convince her. Then I will go to King Edmund. Cassian turned to leave, but paused. And Arthur, prepare our men, just as a precaution. Understood. Cassian left the yard with his heart pounding. He looked for Kira in the usual places, the watchtower, the armory, the gardens. Nothing. He asked the guards. No one had seen her. He went to her quarters and knocked. No answer. Unease began to take shape in his chest. He focused his senses, trying to catch her scent, that unique fragrance that was purely her. Nothing. It was as if she had simply vanished. No, he thought, panic beginning to rise. No, she cannot have left. But the more he searched, the more desperate he became. No trace, no scent, as though she had never existed. Finally, frustrated and sliding into real panic, Cassian went to Cecilia's chambers. He knocked harder than necessary. Come in, Cecilia's sweet voice replied. Cassian opened the door and found her seated by the hearth, calmly embroidering. She looked up and smiled, a smile that did not match the coldness in her eyes. Your Majesty, what a surprise. Where is Kira? He demanded without preamble. Cecilia blinked, the picture of confusion. Kira? I do not know. I gave her the day off. Why are you looking for her? I need to speak with her. About what? Cecilia's voice was too casual, too carefully measured. Cassian studied her. I need her help, he said, his voice calmer than he felt. Interesting. Cecilia set her embroidery aside. And why would you do that without consulting me? She is my guard. Because... Cassian took a step into the room. Silence stretched between them, heavy and dangerous. I cannot hide it anymore, Cassian said, already determined to confess everything right then and there. But Cecilia rose slowly. I know my fiancé was with my guard in the stables like two animals in heat. The cruelty in the words made Cassian take a step back. Cecilia, no. She lifted a hand. You do not need to explain. Mate, Cecilia interrupted softly. Cassian froze. You know. I know everything. She turned toward the window, her shoulders dipping slightly, her voice suddenly tired. I have known longer than you imagine. The silence that followed was strange. Cassian watched her, expecting an explosion. Tears, shouting, the fury he had assumed was inevitable. But it did not come. Are you not angry? He asked, unable to hide his surprise. Cecilia let out a quiet laugh, humorless. I am exhausted, Your Majesty. There is a difference. She turned back, and there was something in her eyes he could not fully name. I cannot fight destiny, and I cannot force a man to love me when his heart belongs to someone else. Cassian opened his mouth, but she continued before he could speak. You did what you had to do. She did too. Cecilia walked to the side table with calm, almost mechanical steps. All that is left for me is to accept it. Cecilia, you do not need to say anything else. She picked up a pitcher of wine, her hands perfectly steady. In fact, she poured 2 cups with the excessive care of someone who needed her hands occupied. I would like to toast to what you found in each other. Cassian frowned. You do not have to. I do. She turned, offering him a cup with a small smile that looked too genuine to question. Let me at least have this. One last gesture of dignity. He hesitated. Something in his mind whispered danger. But it was Cecilia. She was accepting it. She seemed at peace. All right, he said, taking the cup. Cecilia lifted hers. To Kira, then, and to Brave Choices. They clinked their cups. They drank. The wine was exquisite, rich, full-bodied, with a faint hint of spice. Cassian took several swallows, feeling warmth spread through his chest. Thank you, he said, genuinely relieved. I did not expect you to understand like this. Sometimes I surprise even myself. Cecilia set her cup down and smiled again. You may go, Your Majesty. Find her. Cassian nodded, already turning on his heel, his thoughts rushing back to Kira. He did not see Cecilia's smile vanish the moment the door closed. But as he walked the corridors, Cassian felt something strange begin to happen. His mind grew hazy. The thoughts of Kira that had been crystal clear and urgent began to thin, like ink dissolving in water. He shook his head, trying to clear it, but it only worsened. What is happening? Then he saw Cecilia at the end of the corridor speaking with a servant. Sunlight struck her golden hair, making it shine. She turned and smiled at him, and something warm coiled in Cassian's chest. She is beautiful, he thought. And then he stopped, confused. Wait. What? But the thought persisted. Cecilia was beautiful, and kind, and patient. She had understood his confusion, had not judged him. She would make a good wife. Cassian narrowed his eyes. Something was wrong, something very wrong, but he could not name it. The next days became a strange blur. Cassian found himself agreeing to things he knew he did not want, smiling when Cecilia touched his arm, making plans for the wedding as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And the most frightening part? It felt right. Kira. Who was Kira again? Oh yes, the guard. Pretty, certainly, but not important. Not like Cecilia. Cecilia is what matters, his fogged mind whispered. Cecilia is the one you love. But somewhere deep, very deep, a part of Cassian screamed that this was wrong, that he was forgetting something crucial. Someone crucial. Dark eyes, hair like silk, a defiant smile. Who? The image dissolved before he could hold on to it. Kira woke in darkness. Her head throbbed, her mouth was dry, and she had no idea where she was. She tried to move and discovered her hands were bound behind her back. Panic exploded in her chest. What happened? Where am I? She blinked, trying to adjust to the dark. Slowly, shapes formed. Stone walls, iron bars, a small opening in the ceiling where a thin thread of light seeped through. A dungeon. Memory returned in fragments. She had gone to the stables as Cecilia suggested, to relax. But when she arrived, guards she did not recognize were waiting. Before she could react, something covered her face. A cloth soaked in some substance that made her black out almost instantly. And then, nothing. Until now. Cecilia, the realization hit like a punch. Cecilia did this, did she? Unless she found out. It cannot be. Cecilia would never forgive betrayal. Let me out, she shouted, her voice echoing against the stone. Only silence answered. Kira tugged at the ropes binding her wrists, but they were too tight. Whoever had tied her up knew exactly what they were doing. How long have I been here? Hours? Days? She had no idea. Arthur knew something was wrong. In all the years he had served Cassian, he had never seen him act like this. Distracted was normal when the king was planning strategy. But this was different. Cassian seemed hollow, as if something vital had been ripped from him, leaving only the shell behind. He agreed with everything Cecilia said, smiled when she touched his arm, made wedding plans without hesitation, and never, not once, mentioned Kira. His mate, Arthur thought with rising alarm. How can he simply ignore it all when he was so determined? When that day he even asked me to prepare the royal guard for a possible confrontation. How did he change his mind so quickly? Arthur had confronted Cassian twice, asking about Kira, about the plan to break the engagement. Cassian only looked at him in confusion. Break the engagement? Why would I do that? Cecilia is perfect. The word had come out mechanical, programmed. Arthur recognized magic when he saw it, and this had magic written all over it. He began to investigate quietly. He questioned servants, guards, anyone who might have information. That was how he learned about Marta, the servant who had gone to the mountains to fetch something for the princess. And when Arthur pressed her, threatening to expose her to the king, she broke. Love potion, she confessed, trembling. The princess sent me to get it from the healer, and a lotion, to erase scents. Arthur's blood ran cold. When? 5 days ago. 5 days. Exactly when Cassian's behavior had changed. Where is Kira? Arthur demanded, gripping the woman by the shoulders. I do not know, Marta sobbed. I swear I do not. The princess did not tell me everything. Arthur released her, mind racing. Scent erasing lotion. That was why Kira's scent had vanished. That was why she had simply disappeared. But where would the princess hide her? He began to search, quietly, methodically. He checked every empty room, every abandoned tower. Nothing. But he did manage to learn the way to the dungeons, a part of the castle rarely used, reserved only for the worst criminals. And that was where he found her. Kira was curled in the corner of the cell, wrists bloodied, face pale. When she heard footsteps, she lifted her head, eyes shining with a mix of hope and fear. Arthur? Her voice was hoarse from screaming. Gods, Arthur murmured, already working the lock. Kira, what happened? Cecilia, she said simply. I think I ended up here on her orders. I think she found out everything. Kira closed her eyes, tears finally spilling free. And Cassian did not come. He used me. No, Kira, please do not think that. Arthur spoke quickly as he opened the door. He is under the effects of a love potion. Cecilia bewitched him. He is not in his right mind. Kira's eyes widened. A potion? But how? I am not sure, but we have to break the spell. Arthur stepped into the cell and began untying her wrists. And for that, we need you. Me? Kira stared at her injured hands as they were finally freed. How can I help? You are his mate, Arthur said simply. If anything can break this, it is the bond between you. Kira wanted to believe it. But after 5 days alone in the dark, her faith was frayed. Chapter 5. Arthur took Kira to his own quarters, a calculated risk, but a necessary one. She was too weak, too injured to be seen in the main corridors. Eat, he ordered, setting bread, cheese, and fresh water in front of her. You need to clean up too, Arthur said, already preparing a basin of warm water. And change your clothes. Why are you helping me? Kira asked suddenly. You're his beta. You should be on Cassian's side. I am on Cassian's side, Arthur corrected, handing her a clean cloth. And that's why I know he would never choose Cecilia of his own free will. I know my king. I know when he's himself and when... He shook his head. When he's being controlled. Kira wiped her face, her hands trembling. How are we going to break the potion? I have a plan, Arthur said, his voice low and measured. Kira stared at him, anxious. We need to find a way to get you alone with him, without anyone noticing. If Cassian catches your scent, maybe he'll be able to feel it, even if he's weak, if you're close enough. There's a chance something will wake up. The bond might speak louder than the potion. She swallowed hard. After that, I'll intercept him. A few days ago I received our advisor's reply. I'll show him the letter. He might not believe your words, but he'll recognize the royal seal. Arthur drew a deep breath. I'm going to tell him everything to reinforce whatever you say. I hope it works. Cassian was in the gardens with Cecilia, discussing floral arrangements for the wedding. Wedding. The word sounded right inside his foggy mind. I'm going to marry Cecilia. She's perfect, beautiful, kind. But something bothered him at the edges of his awareness. Like a mosquito he couldn't swat away. There was someone else. Someone important. Someone who... The image dissolved before he could grab it. Your Majesty? Cecilia's voice pulled him back. Are you listening to me? Yes, sorry. Cassian shook his head. I was just... thinking. About what? Cecilia touched his arm, her fingers tightening slightly. I don't know. And it was true. He truly didn't know. Cecilia smiled, that sweet smile that lately felt so... fake? No. Impossible. Cecilia was sincere. She was what? Cassian pressed his fingers to his temples. His head was starting to ache. Perhaps you should rest, Cecilia suggested, concern coloring her voice. You've been so distracted. Maybe. Cassian answered quietly, almost automatically, as if the word had been placed in his mouth by someone else. Cecilia smiled, satisfied, as if she were guiding a well-trained animal by an invisible leash. He walked, heading toward his room. His footsteps echoed in the empty corridor. Torchlight flickered, and the castle seemed to hold its breath. But then, a hand came out of nowhere and clamped over his mouth. Cassian tried to react on instinct, but his body didn't respond with its usual ferocity. His mind was slow, fogged. Even so, his heart slammed in his chest. He was yanked backward, dragged into the shadow of a column. A firm arm locked around his waist, pinning his back against a smaller body. And in that second he realized. It's a woman. The scent hit first. Not sweet perfume. Something real. Fresh. Wet earth. A smell that made some part of him, a part buried, smothered, jolt awake like a startled animal. Quiet, the voice whispered in his ear, low, urgent, almost a growl. Cassian froze. The words cut through the fog in his mind like a blade. Quiet, or they'll find us. His body recognized it, the tone, the texture, the feeling of that arm around his waist. And for one absurd instant, Cassian didn't fight. Not because he was weak, but because something inside him wanted to let go. The hand lifted slowly from his mouth, not like someone releasing a hostage, but like someone offering a choice. And Cassian, still confused, followed. He was led down a side corridor, through narrower passages, through a door that creaked softly. The woman moved like a shadow, fast, sure-footed, like someone who knew the castle from the inside out. When they entered a small, empty room, it felt as though the sound of the world stayed outside. The door closed. Cassian turned, and the air vanished from his lungs. Kira. She was there, alive, pale, with her hair loose, eyes burning with a shine that mixed pain and fire. Her wrists were still marked, as if they'd been crushed by rope. Kira? The name slipped out without permission, heavy, strange, like a memory forcing its way back. She stepped closer, her head unbowed. You don't remember, do you? Her voice shook, but not with fear. With restraint. With anger held back by sheer force of will. Cassian frowned, his chest tightening. It was like trying to hold water in his hands. Images came and went. A stream, a kiss, hay, a slap, and the fog swallowed everything before he could make sense of it. I I don't... He lifted a hand to his temple. What's happening to me? Kira took a deep breath, as if every word were a blow she had to endure. She bewitched you. Her voice came out low, deadly. Princess Cecilia put a love potion in you, and she locked me in the dungeon for 5 days. Cassian took a step back. That's true. She cut him off, her eyes blazing, and I'm going to prove it. She moved one step closer, and Cassian caught her scent clearly. It was like taking a punch to the chest. The fog wavered. The wolf inside him stirred, restless, as if it recognized something the man had been forced to forget. Kira lifted her hand slowly, not to strike, to touch his face. And that simple gesture felt dangerous, intimate, forbidden. Look at me, Cassian. Her voice broke into a thin thread. Please, just look. He looked, and something cracked inside him, like ice splitting. His mouth opened without sound. Kira swallowed her sob. You called me your mate. The word hit Cassian like thunder. Mate. His body reacted before his mind. Memory returned in violent flashes. The pillar on the night of the attack, him holding someone, her teeth sinking into his hand. Dark eyes, furious, beautiful. And then the truth, raw and cutting. He was being controlled. Kira. His voice came out rough. What did they do to you? She smiled without humor, tears shining. Cassian took a step and stopped, as if he were afraid of being fooled again. Kira crossed the distance herself. Don't think, she whispered. Just feel. And before his mind could build another excuse, she kissed him. In the first second, it was only shock. In the second, the world exploded. The fog shattered like glass. Memories crashed back like an avalanche. The stream, the stable, the way she said his name, the way her body fit against his like destiny. The wolf roared inside him, furious, awake, whole. Mine. When Cassian yanked her hard against him, it was like grabbing his own life back. And Kira, trembling against him, could only whisper, I had to bring you back. The fog around Cassian's mind splintered like glass. Memories flooded back. Every moment with Kira, every touch, every word. The way his wolf had roared the instant he saw her. The absolute certainty that she was his. And with the memories came rage. Cecilia bewitched him. Imprisoned Kira. Cassian deepened the kiss, pulling Kira against him as if he couldn't bear to have her far from him for even one more second. When they finally broke apart, they were both shaking. Kyra, he said, his voice rough. The fury exploding inside Cassian was primal, absolute. His inner wolf roared, demanding blood. She's going to pay. I swear she will... Later. Kira set a hand on his chest, steadying him. First, we need to make sure the spell is completely broken. Cassian covered her hand with his. It is. I can feel it. You brought me back. I know, but she might try again, so don't drink anything she offers. Kira smiled through her tears. You're mine. Always have been, Cassian vowed, and always will be. But before they could say more, the door burst open. Well, well, Cecilia's voice slid into the room like a sharpened blade. Who managed to slip free, or did you have help? She entered slowly, face cold, eyes burning with contained fury. It doesn't matter, she continued, folding her arms. You're going back there, Kira, for the crime of using magic against your princess. Cassian's mind was still unsteady, the potion not fully dissolved. He felt something wrong inside himself, as if he were still vulnerable, exposed, fragile in a way he would never admit. But when Cecilia pointed at Kira with disdain, something in him reacted. An instinct. A roar. Before he could speak, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Heavy, coordinated. Cassian's royal guard entered, and behind them, Arthur. The silence turned heavy. Arthur stopped beside Cassian, posture impeccable. "Princess Cecilia." His voice was firm as stone. "You are under formal accusation of using forbidden magic and unlawfully imprisoning a mate." He paused briefly. "Not just any mate, the king's mate." Cecilia laughed, a hysterical, disbelieving sound. "He's my fiancé. The agreement was made. He belongs to me. The only person I belong to is Kira." Cassian's voice came out low, cold, still slightly dragged by the potion's after effects, but filled with authority. Arthur continued. "I obtained the official response from the advisors of the Southern Kingdom. Under the ancient laws, when a king finds his mate, he has the immediate right to review any previous marital agreement." Cecilia went pale. "The agreement then becomes a matter decided between the parties involved, and no kingdom may force a marriage when a recognized mate bond exists." Arthur took a step forward. "Furthermore, it is considered a grave crime to attack, imprison, or magically manipulate a king's mate. That constitutes an attempt at political weakening and diplomatic aggression." The air seemed to vanish from the room. "That," Arthur concluded, "grants legal advantage to King Cassian." Cecilia took a step back. "You can't do this." That was when another voice spoke. "I beg you." King Edmund entered. He had heard everything. He was pale. And then, to everyone's surprise, he dropped to his knees. Cassian froze. "Your Majesty," Edmund said, voice breaking. "My daughter is young, impulsive. She didn't know she was your mate. She didn't understand the gravity of it. I beg you not to turn this into war." Cassian felt fury surge. She knew. She knew exactly what she was doing. He opened his mouth. But before he could speak, he felt Kira's hand wrap around his. Firm, determined. She squeezed. "Don't do this, please," she begged with her eyes. He looked at her, and he saw something there that wasn't weakness. It was honor. "She committed no crime," Kira said, her voice calm despite everything she had suffered. There was no way she could have known. Cecilia's eyes widened. In a way, she hadn't known. That night, when she tossed out the word mate as a provocation, it had been nothing but a bluff, an instinct. She'd seen the way he looked at Kira and gambled big. And when the king didn't deny it, she knew she'd been right. But admitting that now could incriminate her. If they officially confirmed she knew, it would be a direct attack against a king's mate. A grave crime. But Arthur answered. "Kira may not have known when the bond formed," he said, his cold, suspicious gaze locked on Cecilia. "But that doesn't change the facts." He stepped forward. "Even so, you endangered a woman's life by locking her in a dungeon. You manipulated a king's mind with a love potion. You engineered all of it with forbidden magic." His voice hardened further. "I heard your confession myself, and there are witnesses to the purchase of the potions." Silence fell like stone. Edmund closed his eyes. "Cecilia, is it true?" She hesitated, only for a second. But it was enough. Cassian was ready to crush that kingdom politically, ready to use the advantage granted by law. But Kira squeezed his hand again. Harder. She looked at Edmund. "Your Majesty," she said softly, "for many years I had shelter in this castle. I was nobody. Your daughter, one day gave me more than survival." Cecilia stood perfectly still. "I don't want war," Kira finished, her voice steady despite everything. "Or revenge. That's not what will strengthen kingdoms." She took a deep breath before continuing. "We don't have to turn a mistake into destruction. All of us failed from the beginning, out of pride, fear, impulsive choices. But we can still fix this, with honor, without blood." Cassian looked at her and thought, like a true queen. Edmund bowed his head, devastated. "I owe you more than apologies." Arthur spoke with final firmness. "The accusation will be recorded. but it is for King Cassian to decide whether he wishes to pursue it. All eyes turned to Cassian. He drew a deep breath, the last of the potion's haze finally dissolving completely. "Your crime will be handled within your own kingdom," he declared. "But the engagement is dissolved, and any future agreement will be purely diplomatic." Cecilia went white. Edmund nodded, defeated. "Thank you for your mercy." Then Cecilia was taken away by her father, before she could do something reckless and make everything worse again. When they were alone, Cassian finally pulled Kira into his arms. "It's over," he murmured into her hair. "It's finally over." "What happens now?" Kira asked. Cassian leaned back, looking her in the eyes. "Now you come with me, to my kingdom." "Cassian, no," he interrupted gently. "You can't stay here. And His voice dropped lower, more intense. "I can't stay away from you." Kira bit her lip. "I'm only a guard." "You're my mate," Cassian corrected. "And in my kingdom, that means you're my queen." "Queen?" Kira let out an incredulous laugh. "Cassian, I don't know how to be a queen." "You just proved you do." He moved a little closer, warm eyes fixed on hers. "You have honor. You have wisdom. You have the courage to choose peace when it would have been easier to choose revenge." His mouth curved into a teasing half-smile. "And you're good with knives, and you have the best kiss in the world." Kira rolled her eyes, but a blush was already rising in her cheeks. "Say yes, Kira. Come with me. Stand by my side. Be my queen." Tears shimmered in her eyes again, but this time they were tears of happiness. The journey to Cassian's kingdom took a week. When they finally crossed the gates of the southern kingdom, the news was already spreading faster than the horses. The great hall of the southern kingdom was packed. When Cassian entered, Kira at his side, there was no doubt everyone there already knew something had changed. The king had returned different, steadier, more whole. He stopped at the center of the hall. "My people," his voice echoed as strong as ever. "I went north to secure an alliance. I return with something greater than any treaty." He laced his fingers with Kira's. "I found my mate." The murmurs were immediate. This wasn't a political choice. It wasn't strategy. It was destiny. And I am not king enough to defy what the gods decree. He walked a few steps, taking her with him. No agreement is worth more than the truth. Then he looked at Kira. "This woman confronted me when everyone else obeyed me. She bit me when I thought I could control her. She challenged me when I needed to be challenged." A faint smile curved his lips. "She will not stand behind me. She will stand beside me, as my equal." Silence. Then Arthur dropped to one knee. "My queen." One by one, the others followed. Kira felt the weight, not of a crown, but of the choice. She was no longer the orphan. She was no longer the guard or a lady in waiting. She was queen. Days later, settled in the castle, the sun sank behind the trees of the forest surrounding the kingdom. Kira stood with her back to him, watching the horizon when Cassian approached. "Remember," he said quietly, "the day you told me there was no man alive who could command you?" She turned her head slowly, a smile forming. "I remember." He stepped closer, golden eyes gleaming with mischief. "Look at you now." She arched one eyebrow. "Now I command you." Kira let out a scoffing laugh. "Oh, you command nothing." He feigned outrage. "I don't? The one who commands you is me." Cassian laughed, that open, living laugh. "Yes," he admitted without hesitation. "You command, and I'll do anything for you." The silence grew thicker. He slid his fingers along her neck. "May I?" Kira tilted her head to the side, offering her neck without fear. "You may." His eyes turned gold. The wolf stirred beneath his skin. When he marked her skin, it wasn't violence. It was choice. It was union. The bond completed. She breathed in against his chest, feeling the strength, the warmth, the certainty. He leaned to her ear and murmured, "Here's the man who marked you." Kira narrowed her eyes. "And now he commands you." She shoved him. "You did not just say that." Cassian was already stepping away, laughing. "I did." Kira chased him into the clearing, her cloak flying behind her. "Get back here, Alpha King." And as he ran through the forest like a man who had just won the greatest battle of his life, and still knew he would lose every future argument, her laughter echoed between the trees. Because in the end, he could be king of an entire kingdom, but she was queen of his heart, and there, among trees, laughter, and promises, they were finally free.